To Haslan, there was a small delay because of some technical fault. So we are doing the general knowledge class before the math class. So the math class was supposed to happen now, and the class on general knowledge at 12 o'clock. We just change the schedule a little bit here. So first we'll be looking at the class on general awareness, and then we'll be doing the class on mathematics. Okay. So general awareness, I'm going to take up some questions from the international organizations, and then also some important questions from the Indian history part. The two of the main topics that I'm going to cover for you today are the international organizations and the Indian history aspect from a static GK portion of your examination. So these are questions which are quite popular and common in exams. So if you can see how many questions you are familiar with, and according to that, we can just note down all of the important uh, information that we'll be sharing with you along with this particular question. Okay. So let's see here for the first question, that is a question from the Security Council. So how many members, permanent members are there in the Security Council? You can see the United Nations, as we know, the UN has three parts. You can say divide the United Nations into three main bodies. One of the main bodies of the United Nations is the General Assembly. The General Assembly is a body which consists of all the member states of the United Nations, and every nation in the General Assembly, whenever there is any resolution in the General Assembly, all the members have equal voting capacity. Equal voting capacity. There's one vote for each country, irrespective of how big the country is, or how small the country is, how powerful the country is, how weak the country is. It does not matter based on the population of the country. The country with a population of 130 plus crore people like India also has one vote. A country like with a population of 140, 150 crores like China also has one vote. And a country with a population of 10 lakh also would have one vote. So that is one place, one platform which gives you equal, equal importance to all of the nations, and it does not discriminate between the nations based on the population size, military capacity, economy, and all those things. So that is called as the General Assembly. The second wing of the United Nations is the Security Council. The Security Council is the main executive wing of the United Nations. Because any resolution that is passed from the General Assembly goes to the Security Council, and only when the Security Council votes on that particular bill in tandem, that means all of them have to vote for yes. Even if one member in the Security Council votes for no, the resolution does not go through. So each country who is a permanent member of the Security Council has the vote of veto on the resolutions that are tabled in the Security Council. Once a resolution is passed from the Security Council, it goes to the third, you can say, wing of the United Nations, and that is the Secretary General of the UN, who right now is Antonio Guterres. If you don't know, you can write down the Secretary General of the UN is Antonio Guterres. Before Antonio Guterres, the previous Secretary General was Ban Ki-moon, Bankimoon, Moon. That's he was from South Korean descent. So now we talk about here other such things about the United Nations that you should be familiar with is the headquarters of the UN. The headquarters of the United Nations is in New York in the USA. So every year there's a meeting of the General Assembly which is held in USA. So those are the basics of UN that one should know about. And United Nations came into existence in 1945 towards the end of the World War II. Now, the question here is asking you about how many permanent members are there in the United Nations. The correct answer is 5. There are 5 permanent members in the United Nations. These are the members, China being one of them. Then we have UK, we have US, no? So Russia. These are all of the permanent members of the United Nations Security Council, and they have the right to veto. Along with the 5 permanent members, every 3-year period, 10 non-permanent members are also elected for being the members of the Security Council. But the right to veto, the powerful voting right, is only in the hands of these 5 countries who are permanent members of the Security Council. Now that's the answer to question number 1, that is A, which is 5. Now we'll talk about the next question, that is based on the headquarters of the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, UNCTAD, that is United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, headquarter is in which of these following places? So United Nations as a central government governing body has its headquarters in New York in the USA. Apart from that, United Nations has a number of other sister organizations like the UNICEF or the UNDP, or we can talk about the International Labour Organization ILO, or the WHO World Health Organization, and UNESCO is there, and we have UNCTAD, UNCTAD, that is United Nations Conference on Trade and Development. All of these different organizations have their headquarters in different places. Most of them have headquarters in Geneva, that is in Switzerland. For example, the headquarters of the World Health Organization is again in Geneva. So we should be familiar with these kind of United Nations or sister organizations and to know about their headquarters. So most of the UN organizations, you'll find the headquarters either in New York, Washington DC in America, in Geneva in Switzerland, in Paris in France. For example, the UNESCO headquarters is in Paris, France, and the UNCTAD, the UNCTAD headquarters is in Geneva in Switzerland. So question number 2, students, the right answer for the headquarter of UNCTAD is Geneva, and my advice to you would be to make a list of all the UN sister organizations, partner organizations of the United Nations, like the UNICEF, UNESCO, UNDP, and the World Health Organization, International Labour Organization. All of these are sister organizations of the United Nations. Make a list of all of these organizations, and once you have made the list of all these organizations, what you should do is write down the headquarters of these organizations, and if there is any important news with respect to these organizations, you should write down those also. Alright, so question number 2 we have done. Let's go to another question based on the headquarters, and that is World Food Program, WFP. Where is the headquarters of the World Food Program? This is normally something that is, as I told you, ideally we have headquarters in Washington, Geneva, Paris, in these cities, but there are some organizations like the World Food Program. The headquarters of the World Food Program is in Rome, which is in Italy. So question number 3, the correct answer is B, which is Rome. The previous question we have seen the headquarters of UNCTAD, that was in Geneva. I've also told you that UNESCO headquarters is in Paris, and the World Health Organization and International Labour Organization headquarters is also in Geneva. And let's say, for example, the headquarters of the International Court of Justice, the ICJ. Whenever there is any inter-country dispute or any global international dispute, then that dispute goes to the International Court of Justice. Like the dispute regarding the 9-dash line between China and the other South Asian countries who are there joining the 9-dash line in South China Sea. This dispute is also a dispute that the ICJ is looking after, the International Court of Justice. A number of disputes between India and Pakistan have also been to the ICJ, the International Court of Justice. So we can say that the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, is a judicial wing of the United Nations, and the headquarters of the International Court of Justice is in The Hague, THE, and Hague, 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 which is in the Netherlands. So it is important for us to know the headquarters of some of the main international organizations, regulatory organization, development organization, judicial organization, and banking organizations like the World Bank, the IMF, the Asian Development Bank, or the New Development Bank. I'm sure you must have heard about the New Development Bank. This New Development Bank is a bank that caters to the needs of the BRICS countries. The BRICS countries, developing economies in the world, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. They formulated a bank that was earlier supposed to be called as the BRICS Bank, but later on it was named as the New Development Bank. So in terms of international banking organizations, we talk about World Bank, we talk about IMF, we talk about the Asian Development Bank, and then we talk about the New Development Bank. And the New Development Bank headquarters is in Shanghai, China. So make a list of all of these different types of international organizations, a separate list for regulatory organizations like the WTO, World Trade Organization, and then like the FATF, the Financial Action Task Force. Recently, there was a meeting of FATF in FATF is headquartered in Paris, and this meeting was regarding the listing of Pakistan, whether it should be in the grey list of the FATF or should it move to black list or should it move to the white list. So FATF, it stands for the Financial Action Task Force, headquartered in Paris. So regulatory bodies, governmental body, intergovernmental bodies, development bodies of the United Nations like the UNESCO, the UNICEF, UNDP, UNCTAD, and the World Health Organization, International Labour Organization. Then we have the banking organization like World Bank, judicial organization like the ICJ. All of them, make a list of these organizations, write down the headquarters of these organizations, the year that these organizations were founded, and that will help you a lot in your static GK portion for your examination. Maybe if you're taking the railway examination or the law examination, even if some of the MBA banking SSC examination, we have questions based on international organizations. So continuing with the series of questions on international organizations, we'll go to question number 4 now, and let's see what is there in question number 4. Who is the president of the World Bank? Now, if you're watching my previous video today, I discussed with you along with a question about the president of World Bank. Who is the president of World Bank? So if you had watched that video, I'm sure that you would be knowing the answer for question number 4. And the right answer for question number 4 is David Malpass. And as I discussed with you, that the previous president of World Bank was Jim Yong Kim, and the current president of World Bank is David Malpass. Again, headquarters, heads, years, the year when the organization was founded. So in my previous video, I had discussed with you that the World Bank was founded in the year 1945, and it was a culmination of a series of discussions that were held in the US, and the discussions that led to the formation of this important financial organization, the World Bank. The series of discussions are called as the Bretton Woods Conference. Bretton, Bretton, Bretton Woods Conference led to the formation of the World Bank. So again, I will reiterate the fact that you should be familiar with the organizations, the headquarters, the year of founding, and the heads. So who is the chief economist of the International Monetary Fund? In my current affairs class today, this is again something that I had discussed with you, and this was with reference to a question about reducing India's growth forecast for the year 1920. That's currently at 5.8%, and I had discussed with you there that the chief economist of the International Monetary Fund is Geeta Gopinath. So if this question is there, who is the current chief economist of the International Monetary Fund? And the answer would be D, which is Geeta Gopinath. Now, if you see, I've also discussed with you about the president of the International Monetary Fund. The head of the International Monetary Fund is currently Kristalina Georgieva, and the previous head was Christine Lagarde, who moved to the European Union Bank. Okay. So question number 5, the correct answer option is D, that is Geeta Gopinath. So now we'll move to question number 6. Now from question number 6 onwards, we're taking some very crucial questions from Indian history, and most of these questions are centered around the Indian national movement. So in exams like railways, exams for different government posts like UPSCs, Staff Selection Commission, exams like banking, law-based examination, when we get questions from history, one of the most common types of questions that you will find in the paper are from the Indian national movement. So now I have given to you a question here. Now can you read and tell me which of the following pairs are or is correctly matched? So we have 4 answer options here. In each answer option, we have a name of a British administrative head of the state, that is Lord Minto, and then we have Lord Wellesley, then we have Lord Dalhousie and Lord Curzon. These were either the Governor Generals or the Viceroys of India in the colonial time, the British Raj. And on the right hand side, we have names of some important policies or decisions or actions taken by these heads of state under the colonial empire. For example, if we look at answer option A, we have Lord Minto, and the link, it is linked with Subsidiary Alliance. In answer option B, we have Lord Wellesley, linked with the Doctrine of Lapse. In answer option C, we have Lord Dalhousie, linked with the abolition of sati. And answer option D, we have Lord Curzon, linked with the partition of Bengal. So, which of the following pairs of lords and the actions or the policies that they had executed in our country, which had a great impact on the Indian national movement overall? So, which of them is correctly matched? The correct answer here is answer option D. That is Lord Curzon and partition of Bengal. So, it's a part of your preparation for the history portion of your static GK in the GK paper of the various exams that you're taking. One thing that you can definitely do is make a list of all of the important Governor Generals of India and write down Governor Generals and Viceroys, and write down what significant actions they have taken, or if there is anything worth note to write down about them. As a part of, from my end, I have made a short but very important list for you here, and you can probably use your pen and paper and write down here. So starting with the first one, if you see here, the first person I've taken is Warren Hastings. I'm not using the word Lord with any one of them. Right now, they're not our lords. So let's write down. Warren Hastings was the first Governor General of India. So that's why it is important. So why I've written the name Warren Hastings here. It's noteworthy that he was the first Governor General of India. Then you can look at Cornwallis. And why is this person Cornwallis important for us to remember from historical point of view? Is among the other things, one of the main things that was done by Cornwallis was that he introduced the ICS, the the Indian Civil Service, that we today know as the IAS, Indian Administrative Services. Earlier during the British time, the colonial time, it was called as ICS, and Indians were allowed to appear for the ICS examination, and there was some discrimination between the Indian ICS officers and the British ICS officers. Subhash Chandra Bose, who cleared the ICS officers, did not join because he felt that the wage difference, the salary difference, is discriminatory, and that led to one of the main things that triggered his drive to fight for freedom, because against discrimination that was there done by the British. So, who was this person who introduced the Indian Civil Services? And that was Cornwallis. Next, we talk about William Bentinck. He was also a Governor General of India, and one of the major things that he did was abolition of sati. And if you see, this abolition of sati led to a major uprising in West Bengal that ultimately led to more people joining in to fight against the British, because they thought that this abolition of sati was an encroachment by the British upon the the human rights, the fundamental rights of Indians to practice their own religion. Later on, by the efforts of social reformers like Madan Mohan Malviya, awareness was created across the country that things like sati and human sacrifice are something that are social evils, that it is important to get rid of them to reform the Hindu religion. So William Bentinck. So the matching with abolition of sati is not Lord Dalhousie, it is William Bentinck, which is why answer option C is wrong. Okay, and this Dalhousie had taken some very important decisions, and one of them that mainly triggered the first war of independence in India was the doctrine of lapse. So Dalhousie is the one who came up with doctrine of lapse, and it was a British ploy through which they wanted to annex territories of different princely states in India by bringing in the doctrine of lapse, wherein they said that if the head of the princely state, the king or the queen, does not have any legal heir, does not have any son or daughter who can be the heir of the king, then by the doctrine of lapse, the kingdom will automatically become a part of the colonial empire. Right? The kingdom will be annexed by the British under the doctrine of lapse, and this led to many kings of India, of the different princely states of India, joining force with against the British, and the mutiny was there against the British because of this doctrine of lapse. And one of the most famous one is the mutiny done by the Queen of Jhansi, Manikarnika. And the reason behind that was again because of doctrine of lapse, because she did not have any legal heir, and that would have meant that Jhansi would have been annexed by the British. So that is why she revolted and she fought with the British against this very, you can say, draconian law, the doctrine of lapse. Dalhousie is also linked with something very important, that is the first railway line and the first telegraph line. The first railway lines in India and the first telegraph lines of India were also constructed during Dalhousie, and this was also used by those who were in the mutiny, those who revolted against the British in the War of 1857. And also Dalhousie was the Governor General of India when Punjab was annexed. So the princely state of Punjab was defeated and annexed by the British in during the time of the Governor General Dalhousie. So that's why I've mentioned to you some of these very important Governor Generals and Viceroys of India that you should be aware of, and what have they done, why are they noteworthy. So then we go to this next Governor General, who is Canning, who was the Governor General of India during the War of 1857. The steps taken by Dalhousie and the very tough laws introduced by Dalhousie led to a wide mutiny and revolt in the country, which culminated into a joint effort under the leadership of the last Mughal Emperor Bahadur Shah Zafar. And this all happened during the time of Canning, when Canning was the Governor General of India. And which is why after 1857, once the mutiny was over, the British Crown felt that India is not supposed to be governed by the East India Company, and the entire Indian subcontinent was placed directly under the British Crown, because before this India was not under the British Crown, it was under the East India Company. So in 1858, the East India Company was abolished and India was placed directly under the British Crown, the Queen of England, and that is why Canning was the last Governor General of India, and then he was also made the first Viceroy of India. You can see the first Governor General of India is Baron Hastings, the last Governor General of India is Canning, who is also the first Viceroy of India. Now let's look at Curzon. So Curzon, who was also a Viceroy of India, is linked with the partition of Bengal, which is why for question number 6 the correct answer is D, that Lord Curzon is linked with partition of Bengal. So this partition of Bengal being a huge province towards the east, and it was becoming difficult for the British to manage, and they thought that there's a lot of mutiny going on there, people are revolting against the British. In order to make the Bengalis fight amongst each other, the partition of Bengal was done on the religious ground. That was the first partition of India on religious grounds, where the Muslim majority eastern part of Bengal was made separately into East Bengal, and the Hindu majority western part of Bengal was made into West Bengal, and that led to a lot of riots and different things happening. And this is a prime example quoted by historians regarding the British policy of divide and rule, you know. And so that's why partition of Bengal has a very significant place in the overall Indian national movement and during the colonial empire. And one of the worst decisions taken by the British, which split the Indian people into on lines, religious lines. Before this partition, there was nothing like religious lines. Indians were not divided on religious lines, and after the partition, Indians were divided on religious lines. And then, just like Mahatma Gandhi had to take a lot of effort to bring them together, united, to fight against the British. Then it comes to this person, another Viceroy, Chelmsford, who came up with this Act of 1919. This Act of 1919, and there are two acts of the British that were executed in India. One was the Government of India Act 1919, and the second was the Government of India Act 1935. The Government of India Act 1919 gave India some of the self-governing rights, and although this was only just to appease the Congress and to somehow buy more time for the British. So you should read a little bit more about these two acts. One is Act of 1919, that is Government of India Act 1919, which is also linked with the Minto-Malviya reforms. And then you can read the Act of 1935. So these are the things here to learn. And then the last Viceroy of India is Mountbatten. So during the time when India became independent, the last Viceroy of India was Mountbatten, who had very friendly relations with Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, our first Prime Minister. So I have given you a list of some of the important Governor Generals and Viceroys. You should explore this topic a little bit more from your end to know more about these people and what they have done. So all the Governor Generals and all the Viceroys, any important decisions are there, any important law was executed, you should write down, make a list of that. It's a very common question in exam. Is question number 6. Next, let's go to question number 7. Another type of question that can come from history, and that has often come from history, is questions based on titles. Different people of India were given titles during this entire Indian freedom movement and towards the early part of independence also. For example, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel was given the title of the Iron Man of India. During the British time, the colonial empire and colonial rule of India, which of the following persons is also known as the Grand Old Man of India? If you have studied history books, you would have studied that in history, the freedom fighters were initially divided into two types. We had the moderates and we had the extremists. Although the use of the word extremist is not very right, and it was the word given by the British, we should not continue using that word for our freedom fighters today. But yet, if we go by the history books, the classical books of history, the people involved in the freedom struggle of India were moderates and extremists. The moderates were the ones who had a less aggressive stance against the British, and who also thought that the British have done a lot of reform in India, and to some extent the British rule of India is also positive for our country, whereas the extremists were one who were very aggressive towards in their stance against India. And one of the moderates was Dadabhai Naoroji, and he was given the title of Grand Old Man of India. So what you should do is you should make a list of these things. All the important titles given to freedom fighters and politicians during the British Empire, point number 1. Second is you should also make a list of all of the slogans that were raised by prominent people during the Indian independence struggle. Make a list of the names of the persons and who gave that slogan. For example, Chalo Dilli was a slogan given by Subhash Chandra Bose, right? Simon Go Back was a slogan given by Lala Lajpat Rai. So write down the name of the person, the prominent political and freedom fighter, and what slogan did he give, and when was the slogan first raised. That also can come as a question for you in the examination. Okay, so question number 7, the answer is D. It is not Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan. Hamza, this is Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan was called as Frontier Gandhi. What was the name given to Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan? The name given was Frontier Gandhi, because he was a part of the West Frontier region of that today is entirely in Pakistan. And during 1912-13, there was, in fact, 1917 to be exact, the Britishers they abolished the Khilafat in Turkey. So Turkey was placed under the British rule, and Khilafat movement was the concept of a Khalifa, a religious and political head of the Muslim empire, was called Khalifa, Khalifa, and all Muslims across the world would see that person as their main leader. And this concept of Khilafat or Khalifa was abolished by the Britishers in 1917. Okay, and it was in 1917 when the Balfour Declaration also was passed, wherein there was a possibility was rejected of creating a separate state for Israel. That would be a state for the home state, the mother country for the Jews across the world. So Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan started revolting against the Britishers because Muslims were very upset that the Khilafat has been abolished. So a large portion of people, the Pashtuns and the Pathans, towards the tribal areas of Pakistan, the western frontier of Pakistan, northwest frontier provinces, is entirely in Pakistan today, led by Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan. And there was an understanding between Mahatma Gandhi and Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan to join hands together to fight against the British. And this person, Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan, borrowed a lot of Gandhian ideologies of non-violence and protesting peacefully, and the concept of Satyagraha, and he practiced this in his own fight against the British, and which is why he is called the Frontier Gandhi, Frontier, Frontier Gandhi. Frontier because it was the northwest frontier region. So Dadabhai Naoroji is the Grand Old Man of India, and Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan is Frontier Gandhi. Okay, now let's move on to question number 8 here. In which year was the Indian National Congress formed? Indian National Congress was formed in which of the following year? The Indian National Congress, which was later on abolished by you know post-independence, and then again the Indian National Congress Party was created. That is the Congress Party, which has now become the INC again, the Indian National Congress. A Congress, the word Congress itself means a union. So a union of people coming together for a common goal is called Congress, and Congress is also the word used for the Parliament of the you can say the counterpart of the Lok Sabha that we have in India. It's called Congress in the US, and what we call it Raj Sabha in India is called the Senate in the US. So the Indian National Congress was formed in which of the following years? Now we have four answer options here. We have 1865, we have 1885, 1905, and 1895. When was the Indian National Congress formed? Which of the following years? If you know the answer, you can post the answer in the comment section. If you don't know, you can write it down. It is 1885. The Indian National Congress was formed in the year 1885. So correct answer for question number 8 is B, 1885. Let's move on to the next question now. The first session, again a very important question, has come in exams a number of times. The first session of the Indian National Congress was held at which of the following places? The four options in front of you: Kolkata, Delhi, Lahore, and Mumbai. The first session of the Indian National Congress was held at which of the following places? Look at the options here. Question number 9. Is it A, Kolkata? Is it B, Delhi? Is it C, Lahore? D, Mumbai? Now, before we discuss the answer for this question, I'll again give you one more homework to do. Make a list of all of the important sessions of the Indian National Congress. All you have to do is just go to Google and type there important sessions of Indian National Congress. If you have any history book with you, you'll definitely get this information there. Write down the name of all of the important Indian National Congress sessions in one line, in one row. Next to that, you can write down who was the president of Indian National Congress during that particular session. Third, you can write down the year. And fourth, if any major decision, policy, slogan was raised in that particular session. These are the four things. Session, first, second, third, fourth. Second line, second row, who was the president of Indian National Congress during that session? That you write down in the second line. Third, write down the year when that happened. Fourth, the city where it took place. And fifth, if any important thing happened during that particular session. And this will help you a lot, and you definitely see questions from this in exams. Now, coming to this question, the first session of the Indian National Congress was held at Mumbai. Answer option D. That today we know is Mumbai. It was Bombay then. The first session of the Indian National Congress was held at Mumbai or Bombay, as it was called earlier. Question 9. Answer option D. Now, next we'll move on to question number 10. Now, just now we have seen in question number 8 that the Indian National Congress was formed in 1885. So here we know in question 10 again we are referring to that date. The Indian National Congress was formed in 1885 by which of the following persons? Now look at the name of the persons. We have W.C. Banerjee, we have A.O. Hume, we have Jawaharlal Nehru, and D. Dadabhai Naoroji. If you have done even basic study of history in your school and remember something, I am sure that you will be able to give the answer to this question. The Indian National Congress, question number 10, was formed in 1885 by which of the following important personalities? Is it A. W.C. Banerjee, B. A.O. Hume, C. Jawaharlal Nehru, and D. Dadabhai Naoroji? So students, if you don't know, you can write down. Yes, Hamza, that's the right answer. That's A.O. Hume. A.O. Hume was the founder of the Indian National Congress. And if you look at the history of the formation of the Indian National Congress, and if you look at the British resolution that was passed in London, which gave permission to A.O. Hume to form the Indian National Congress. And if you see the request letter of A.O. Hume, the main reason, one of the main reasons why the British allowed the formation of the Indian National Congress was they felt that establishing the Indian National Congress will actually deflate the freedom movement of India, that Indians will become complacent, and that this will give them a sense that they have some stake in the government, and thereby they will stop protesting against the British. The Indian National Congress ultimately led to the freedom movement, and bringing people together in one platform, and actually led to the independence of a country, was created by the British to ensure that India remains under British. So that's quite ironical. Something that was created by the British to extend their rule in India ultimately led to the downfall of the British in India, right? Because they brought like-minded people together in one platform and gave voice to the Indian people, organized them. This taught the Indians how to organize themselves. So, and taught Indians the concept of democracy and election and all those important concepts of civilized societies that earlier they were not familiar with. So the Indian National Congress was formed by A.O. Hume in 1885. Let's move to question number 11. Who was the Viceroy of India when the Indian National Congress was founded in 1885? There are four answer options in front of you: Lord Dalhousie, Dufferin, Canning, and Curzon. Now, if you see here, if you just follow a little bit of what you study in history, Canning was the last Governor General of India, and he was around 1858, right? He was made the first Viceroy of India. Dalhousie was the Governor General of India before Canning, that means before 1858. And Curzon came a little later. So the correct answer is Lord Dufferin. Lord Dufferin was the Viceroy of India in 1885 when A.O. Hume founded the Indian National Congress. The right answer for question number 11 is B, Lord Dufferin. Okay. So, which is why I told you to make a list of all the important governor generals and viceroys and write down what is their significant contribution, or in terms of what major event happened during that particular governor general's regime in India, rule in India. So, question number 11, the answer is B. Let's move to question number 12. Vande Mataram was first sung at the session of the Indian National Congress in. Vande Mataram, written by Bankim Chandra Chatterjee, was first published in Anandmat, a Bengali newspaper, and later on it became a major, you can say, freedom slogan of India, Vande Mataram, and now we know it as our national song. So Vande Mataram was first sung at the session of Indian National Congress in which of the following years? Is it 1919? Anyone studying history, academically in the school or college should be aware of this thing. Vande Mataram was first sung at the session of the INC, the Indian National Congress, in which of the following years? 1919, 1898, 1896, or 1920? If you don't know the answer to this question, then please write down. The correct answer to question number 12 is C, 1896. Right? Question number 12, the right answer is C. So 12 questions we have done, students, today here, covering some very important parts and giving you directions on how to prepare for your examination for static GK. So this was the second session for the day. First session was on current affairs at 10 o'clock. If you have missed that class, you can watch the video again and keep preparing for your current affairs and general awareness for your upcoming examination. The next class is slated to happen at 12 o'clock. So I'll be seeing you again at 12 o'clock with the class on numbers question discussion. The two classes we have finished right now. One is current affairs and one is general awareness. So thank you for joining with me for these sessions, and I will see you again at 12 o'clock. Thank you so much.